Hello and good morning, everyone. I'm George with Good Morning Free America, America's #1 newscast, some 200 years ahead of its time. We have a very special program running today. We have 5 reporters on standby, ready to give you the latest news from our perspective, the Freedmen. We have Anna reporting on slavery, Joey on the north, Sister Monica with the south, Jasael with the northern and southern freedwomen, and finally David with the Indians. With that, let's go ahead and pass it off to Anna.
It is March 4th, 1865. The U.S. Congress passed the Confiscation Act of 1862, meaning slaves from the South have become free. Under this act, Confederates who did not surrender within 60 days of the act passage were to be punished by having their slaves freed. Those who have become free have got the name of freedmen. But with this act, many whites fear freedmen will steal their jobs and their land. Some freedmen went into contraband camps. They have been hired out of loyal Unionist plantation owners for low wages. Others have become homeless and with few possessions of their own. What else would happen with those who got their freedom? What does the future have in store for them? I guess we will just have to.
I guess so, Anna. We'll just have to, won't we? Where do we get these cameramen? Handing it off to Joey with the north.
Okay, hi, I'm here in the north with the Freedmen. So the Freedmen are able to actually have their own land and able to work on their land without being slaves or having owners. And they're also able to have their families here with them, which is very, very good. But their wives have freedom, just like these freedmen, but their children, they'd have to work a little bit more just so they could pay for the children's rights over here in New York. So it seems like everyone's getting treated pretty fairly over here. Nothing too bad's going on. It's really nice out over here. That's it. So everything seems pretty good, so thank you.
Well, alrighty then. Feels good to be a freedman in the north. So now why don't we see how the south is doing with Sister Monica.
Thank you, George. Here in South Carolina, the situation of the freedmen, while it has changed in the post-war years, is still fairly difficult. With the help of the Freedmen's Bureau, many of the freed slaves are still working on the same plantations where they were before, but now only under a system of sharecropping. With this system, the plantation owners provide all of the materials and land that the freedmen need, while the freedmen supply the labor. While this is a better situation with more freedom, it still is quite difficult because the slaves are completely dependent on the former slaveholders for all of the equipment they need. Often this equipment is bought through plantation stores who charge exorbitantly high rates. So often these freedmen find themselves in great debt to their former masters. The situation of prejudice is also still very prevalent in this area. And one of the results of this is through the legal system. Sadly, the only way now to acquire slave labor is if the former slaves have become criminals. So often, the whites will accuse their former slaves of such minor crimes as vagrancy or some sort of public impropriety. And once they're in jail, their labor is then easily acquired for a very low rate. Because of this, the prison population is booming. One advantage to having the Freedmen's Bureau down here is, fortunately for the freedmen families, the women and children who were previously pressed into very difficult manual labor do have some more rights. So as you can see, the situation has changed in some ways, but things are still very difficult for the slaves here in South Carolina and throughout the South. Back to you.
Thank you, Sister Monica, and what a wealth of insight. Next up is Jasael with the northern and southern freedwomen.
Coming in live from South Carolina, here and in other parts of the South, women are transitioning from slaves to freedwomen by pursuing their freedom with retribution, like obliterating the plantation they were freed from. Furthermore, in the transition from slaves to freedwomen, the women are appropriating things they stole to proclaim a new personal superiority and to pride themselves of their freedom. Almost like trophies. For example, stealing the bed and mattresses of a slave owner or even ribbons and putting them in their hair. In addition, here in the South as well as the North, freedwomen are often refusing to do tasks like post-harvest domestic chores for planters. They have also started to refuse to do double duty, but this sometimes enrages employers who then respond with violence. In the North, freed women's acts of freedom are distinguished by trying to reunite their families back together and coming up with strategies to avoid angry white reactionaries and Northern soldiers. Also in the North, freed women are straining to give new sense to their freedom by longing to build, staff, and sustain schools, churches, and other institutions.
Excellent story. And for our final story of the day, let's hear it from David with the Indians.
Yes, on the interactions between Indians and freedmen, it really depended on who you found, or more specifically, who found you. For example, the Cherokee, who gained a reputation for being very adept slave catchers. They were even called slave catcher, the tribe in of itself. And then they would capture you, and depending on who did it, they would either keep you for themselves, or they would return you to your master. The Seminole, on the other hand, would they had instances of integrating with freedmen and freedwomen, which led to the rise of the Black Seminoles.
And there you have it, Free America. 5 great stories from 5 great reporters. You know, if this were a school project, I think I'd give them all an A. I hope you all enjoyed today's segment. This is George with Good Morning Free America, signing out.